Hello, everyone. Good morning. Great to see y'all. Okay, we are going to get started with our civic engagement session. Here's the agenda for today. So I'm going to go over announcements in just a second. We'll have an intro to civic engagement, and then we'll have a civic engagement roundtable, which I'm really excited about. So get your questions ready. We'll then have lunch, and then there will be some youth choice workshops. So today you have the option between the voting power of young people, fact-checking, media and information comprehension, and then discourse, dialogue, and debate. Just kidding, just the top two, which is what I thought, but I was going to read what was on the screen. So that's okay. That's okay. Just the voting and then fact-checking, two really great options. And then we'll end with some cohort reflection. So that's what today looks like. And then announcements, the end of summer celebration is this Thursday at 5. Thank you, at 5:30. That's great. We are very excited to celebrate all the work that y'all have put in. And so hope to see you there this Thursday. And then a friendly reminder, deliverables are due on Monday, the 15th. And so get those turned in. If you're missing any deliverables at this point, get those turned in, please. We'll be following up on those. So it's really important to get that in, especially if you are expecting a stipend. And if you are expecting a stipend, be on the lookout for an email next week with some important information and a form that you'll need to fill out to receive that stipend. And so don't neglect your emails as we're wrapping up. And then lastly, the revised resume does have to be a revised resume. And so I know some of you wrote executive summaries. So this time we're asking that you revise it into a resume if you wrote an executive summary at first. And then you can just reach out to us if you need any help with that. But it should be pretty straightforward to kind of transfer what you have already written. And that's all I've got.
I'm actually going to go back a slide real quick. All right, well.
Go, please.
Okay. All right. So today we're talking about civic engagement. So we're going to get started by asking you all what you think civic engagement is. How would you define it? And if I could have my microphone, people, that would be cool. All right, Allison, talk loud until they get the microphones. Okay, so we have connecting to other people. Kais?
Hi, my name is Krista, and I would say it's like having a duty and like being involved in your community.
Okay, awesome.
I was going to say pretty much the same thing, just participating like in community service, voting, just things that help your community.
All right, we got some good examples there. Any other examples?
I do have a mic over here, too. No pressure.
I'm sorry, did anyone say participating in your like local politics?
Okay, so like local government?
Yeah, or I should say like voicing your opinion in any sense of the, in any like in any political theater, not just local but state and federal.
Awesome.
Lara, I think? Oh, no, okay, sorry.
Does anyone not know what civic engagement is or have any questions about it? Networking is part of it for sure. I did not know how to define civic engagement before we started this conversation.
Oh, I was going to say, I was raising my hand to say, I do not know what civic engagement is. I'm Brees, by the way.
Awesome. So we got some new people new to civic engagement. All right. So the actual textbook definition, I'm going the wrong way, is the process of helping people be active participants in building and strengthening their communities, whether defined as a place or a shared identity or interests. So thinking about this, we've already had some examples, but what are some other ways we might participate in civic engagement based on this definition?
Going to like a local theater, like, what's that called? I can't think of the word for it now. But like
a local theater?
yeah,
Okay, that
or like
could,
a town show or something. I don't know. Or
all right, so supporting local events. And I see Saran's hand back there, Janae.
I was gonna add, and this kind of goes into the last part, but making sure different groups of people are represented in higher levels.
Yeah, so thinking about representation, awesome. So the process of helping people be active in their communities. What are some other ways we might do that?
Volunteering?
Volunteering, yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah. You know, you could do it at like nonprofits, like humane societies, soup kitchens, all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, definitely volunteering. Oops.
I wanted to also add, sometimes it can look like, for example, helping people register to vote. There's definitely some barriers to access to voting and participating in other community things. So one way that you can sort of engage people is helping them to participate in those things.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to have a workshop all about that later. So if you're interested, definitely go to the voting workshop.
I was gonna say, I don't know if anyone. Giving money, like donating, just to certain charities or causes.
Yeah, that's definitely civic engagement too. So donating, thinking about maybe donating to those nonprofits, also donating to organizations that help with other types of civic engagement, local government, voting.
No, go ahead. Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I'm going to push a little bit. So, donating is an awesome way to help a cause or a community. Let's say you don't have money to donate. Can anyone think of ways that they would further a cause without being able to donate? Miss Kennedy?
Maybe like even going to like promoting it on social media or like just spreading the word a little bit.
Yeah, getting that word out there, absolutely. Can anyone think of anything else? Oh, yes.
I was just saying, like, donate your time instead of money.
Yes, very much so.
I was gonna say baking a lot and then give it to person and then get money. But I guess
One thing about Allison is she's gonna bake, and I relate to that so much. I'm thinking about one other thing in particular. Can anyone have any other thoughts about things you can do if you can't donate money? Let me see. Here, and I'll run to you.
Protesting?
Showing up, kind of in line with time, but like being there and being present, absolutely.
Educating yourself on the topic?
That is such a huge one, absolutely. Learning more and being like more informed is awesome. And also, I'm just gonna tell you guys, thinking about petitions and signing petitions.
But on the topic of educating yourself and learning about things, that's what the other workshop will be about. So you have two great choices.
So what are some ways that y'all have engaged in civic participation and engagement already? What topics have you educated yourselves about? Petitions you've signed, protests you've been to, causes you've donated to in some way?
I voted
Yes.
in the primaries.
That's like the best thing you can do. So, yes.
And then I also gave a bunch of people, we're in like a group. I gave them all the primary voting information. So
Awesome.
all around me.
My name is Haley, and well, y'all kind of did this, but I worked at a nonprofit, and so SummerWorks was paying for my work, but I was working, doing a bunch of work and helping them.
I'm going to challenge you, Haley. So we set you up, but you put your time and your effort. You did that, not us. You worked at that nonprofit. I've never been to mentor before. Mentor to youth, I'm sorry, I always mix that up. All right.
Evie? I've hosted voting registration events or seminars.
Nice work.
I would say kind of going off of like what Evie was saying, like posting all the different like awarenesses of different situations, or even if I come across a petition and I like read it all, I'll not only sign it, but I'll also like post that on my story or something, spread the word. Yeah.
Social media is really great for spreading the word, so that's good to hear.
Go ahead.
Has anyone had things that they've wanted to civically engage with, I suppose you could say, but didn't know how?
Well, I feel like I don't really know how to volunteer unless you like seek it out through an organization. I think it's difficult to actually find like opportunities to actually go out into the community and volunteer to do something with them.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of great resources on that, and if you want, I can definitely give you some of those. But I just want to do a show of hands real quick. How many people have volunteered before? All right, almost everybody. How many people have voted before? I know not everyone's old enough, but all right. How many people have signed a petition before? Okay, signed a petition. How many people have given blood? All right. Trying to think of other ones. How many people have given money to a fundraiser? All right, so you all seem pretty civically engaged. You know what we're talking about here. So,
Why do you think we're bringing this up here at SummerWorks today? So this is professional development. Why is civic engagement a professional development topic? We're coming, Haley.
I took the long way this time. It's about the journey, right?
It looks really good on your resume and stuff in a professional setting.
So it looks good on a resume, that's true. And what were you saying about a professional setting?
I think it helps people like respect you more, like you're willing to go out and actually be active. And I think it just really looks good. It makes you look responsible. It makes you look like you're ready to go out and to actually do stuff.
Definitely proactive, yeah, it definitely shows something.
I think also because there's like civic engagement like within the workplace. So like if you see something going wrong, like advocating for that and just advocating for a better community within your workplace.
Yes, Evie, advocacy.
I think that a lot of your civic duties can also affect your work duties. So who you choose to vote for can affect your work. And then also the company that I'm currently at, they like emphasize like nonprofit work so that they can actually kind of join together.
All right. Next, we're going to do a group activity, and it's really just to get the discussion going, keep it flowing. So we're going to do what's called the Think, Pair, Share. What I'll do is have you each turn to a neighbor at your table. Hopefully everybody has at least a partner at their table to do this with. And we'll just kind of go through these questions. I'd like you to share with your partner at your table. Your answers to a couple of these. We'll come back in a few minutes, and then we'll kind of open it up to the table as a whole group. We'll come back again, open up discussion, see what folks had for ideas on these topics. All right, let's bring this back in. Is everybody set with the conversations that they've had? Are we ready to share a little bit? All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through a few of these questions here, see what kind of responses you guys had and what you all talked about. So this first one here, why is civic engagement important to you? And we'll have mics floating around. Anyone wish to share what their group chatted about? Got one in the middle here.
Civic engagement is important to me because it directly affects me, and it just keeps me in the loop of what's going on and what I need to be privy to.
Right. Yeah, the world moves around you, and sometimes it seems like those decisions that are going to impact you are made without your consent or your voice. So making sure that you get your voice out there, super important. Any other folks want to share what they were talking about in their group about why civic engagement is important to you in particular? Maybe we'll take one more on this question. Got one back here.
Hi, my name is Clara, and I think that as like people, we have a moral obligation to help others, and when issues don't personally affect us, that doesn't mean that they won't in the future, and that we shouldn't help other people. So.
Right. I think generally, you know, if community isn't something that's important to you, then even if something's not going to affect you directly, indirectly it is if it's going to impact your neighbor, right? Good point there. All right, we'll move on to this next question. I know we talked about it a little bit, but can anyone else share maybe some ways that you've particularly participated in civic engagement?
I did tech theater at Ann Arbor Civic Theater on West Ann Street, so I was a part of that group for a couple of years, and then obviously tech troop, and I'm trying to think of another thing. My high school theater club at my school.
Awesome. Yeah, great getting involved with those community organizations and programs. Anybody else? Maybe one more before we move on to this next question. If not, that's fine. We can move on to this next one here. What type of civic engagement is particularly inspiring to you? What gets you up and going in civic engagement?
I would say I noticed with like kind of when protests happen and all that, seeing people come together, I feel like that does make a difference. Like I feel like sometimes if some people or one community is just talking and it's like something is against them, they're not really going to listen. But I feel like sometimes if people come together and make protests for anything, then they have to listen because it's like starting this thing in the world. And then for two, they will kind of listen, hopefully. But they have to kind of, it's like they're forced to listen.
Yeah. Right. Sometimes I think it might feel like if you're not involved too much out in the community, it can feel kind of isolated. So getting that big group out there to all come together for a common cause can really be empowering for people. You know, you're noticed, you're heard, and it's really a good way to get your cause out there. Any other ways that folks feel particularly inspired by their civic engagement? Oh, we got one back here as well.
Back here, we talked a little bit about how it can be very inspiring to see people sort of go out in environments that have a lot of hostility towards them and still sort of advocate for what they want to advocate for. So that's something that really inspires me because there's just so many people out there that are really courageous, and it makes me want to be courageous as well.
I think that's a really important part of civic engagement is especially sometimes if you don't know how to get involved, seeing other people go out there and do it and show you how it's done can really get you motivated and want to join the cause as well. So I definitely agree with that. All right, move on to this next question. What aspect of civic engagement do you think is the most important? Maybe the most impact for you? Did anybody come up with anything in their groups for that one?
Something we talked about here is that being like conscious in what you're doing, like don't just sign a petition, don't just go to a protest, make sure that you actually know what the petition is. If you don't know, like learn about it while you're there. Like people have the clipboards, they have time, they'll tell you all about it. And just being like conscious about that stuff, which is something I didn't really think about, even though I do like to be that kind of person.
Definitely, just being knowledgeable about what's going on in your community. That's kind of the first step to knowing how you might want to help or how you might want to advocate for yourself or others. Carlos, did you have an idea too?
Yeah, I think that especially with this like generation, as is typical with most younger people, actually getting out and voting is probably one of the most the areas of improvement that we need to concentrate on the most, because a lot of these other civic engagement areas are we all have significant interest in. We're known for protesting, right? But actually voting is something that is an area where we really do need to improve, because we have such low turnout for this group. So I think that if there's one thing that I would think is important, it's that.
Great, thanks for sharing that. Definitely agree. Tabitha, did you?
No, I'm just saying we're good to go on mine.
Oh, great. All right. I think I'll ask this last one here. What are the ways that you want to engage civically? Is there any quick answers out there for folks before we do move on? I just want to make sure we cover all the questions that we did talk about as a group. And if not, we can move on to the next piece here, which is a roundtable. Oh, and thanks for your responses.
Now, David, can they hear me up here by chance? Wonderful. Hi, everyone. So you're awkwardly behind me. We're just going to sort out our tech issues. Hi, Ryan. It's so great to see you. Alex. All right. I'm going to pick on Ryan and Alex because I know you both. Can one of you come off mute and we can test that sound?
Yeah, hello.
Oh, you sound wonderful. Beautiful. Okay. And I gotta remember, I want to look at you all, but I want you to be able to see me. So I'll try and remember. So welcome everyone to our panel discussion on civic engagement. We've got a really rich group of folks that have volunteered their time to chat with you all and answer your questions. So, but before we get started, you probably want to know who the heck these people are, right? Or not, we can just get started. Yeah, we do see the names, but first we're gonna have everyone go around that's in the Zoom meeting popcorn style, because that's my favorite style. We'll go around and have everyone introduce themselves, and if you could just tell us your name, your preferred pronouns, your title or your role in your organization, and then how that role relates to civic engagement, and then just your favorite part of being involved in that civic engagement. And we'll put that in the chat too. And again, Alex, I already know your volume works so well, so Alex, why don't you start us off?
Hello, I'm Alex. I just graduated from the University of Michigan with my MPH in the spring. I do organizing work with the Coalition for Re-envisioning Our Safety with Ryan. kind of with Ryan now. We both do this work on separate arms. Pronouns, she, her, I'll add that to my bio. There's no title or position with Crows, but it relates to civic engagement. I think organizing is a very main form of civic engagement. We organize at government officials and with the community.
Alex, can you tell the folks what Crows is just while you're here?
Yes, absolutely. So Crows is, we're advocating for an unarmed, non-carceral response to urgent needs that people in Ann Arbor and Washtenaw County might need. And so a lot of the words we use are care-based, non-carceral, unarmed are the big words we use to describe the ethos of that type of response, but I'm sure we can talk more about that as it goes forward. So folks that need help at a time, we think there should be solutions that are non-punitive and preventative. So we organize there was a resolution at the city council we're pushing towards. We talk to folks in the community and see what they might need. We try to get buy-in. Ryan can add on a lot about this too. So I think that relates to civic. In my head, that is civic engagement. That's what
absolutely.
Civic engagement is. Not the only way, but it's a main way or a big way. And then my favorite part about participating in civic engagement is at the local level. I mean, everyone here. I don't know everyone here. I recognize some of the names. But a lot of the people here work locally. We can make real change and do things. So we can say we have this idea and now we can actually make it happen. We can make it go. And that's exciting, being able to, and just talking to people, seeing people's good ideas and then making things happen. It's so energizing. Ryan and I are both big, we get energy from these things, and it's exciting to see people caring about their community and engaging and putting in effort to make things better. So yeah.
Yes,
That was probably too long for an intro, but I will pass it off to Ryan so we can stay on the Crows thing, so he doesn't have to repeat himself.
Sure. Can everyone hear me okay?
You're great, Ryan.
Okay, wonderful. So my name is Ryan Hinyard. I use he, him, his pronouns. Title position, I'm one of the founding members of Crows, a coalition for revisioning our safety, and have been working in that space for a long time. I am also a trustee on the board for Avalon Housing, a local nonprofit that does permanent supportive housing for neighbors in need, meaning that we provide housing first as a human right, and we also provide wraparound social services for helping a number of neighbors really make big transitions and help provide care that isn't tied to ideas of worthiness or merit that don't really belong in those conversations, in my opinion. In addition, I am one of the folks helping to stand up a nonprofit to help respond to the eventual RFP for unarmed response in Ann Arbor. We're tentatively calling it care-based safety, although we're going to do a lot of community engagement to pick a cooler name. But it is a wonderful group of folks that has been really dedicated to trying to find ways to help connect community resources with community problems and find ways that we can, outside of punishment-based systems, to be able to alleviate and solve problems at the root. That is actually what I really love most about civic engagement. I am someone who has sometimes a pessimistic streak about my own personal impact, but I am deeply optimistic in how much community and other people have to be able to contribute to a lot of the issues and problems that we see. I think that we actually have a lot of resources, specifically here in Washtenaw County, to be able to address so many different issues, and finding ways to connect people's interests, skills, awareness, the things that they love, the things that they are animated by, the problems they want to solve, with opportunities to improve people's lives gives me a lot of joy. I think that one of the things that I want folks to take away from this is that this is, community engagement is hard work, but it's also really joyful work. It's work that provides a lot of space to connect and get to know and build beloved community. My day job is much less exciting. I am the director for faculty and education initiatives at the Association of American Medical Colleges. I work with a lot of minority faculty folks across the country and some in Canada. But there also, I try to bring in this idea of civic engagement and getting people involved to make the change. There is a quote from Grace Lee Boggs that I'll end on that is, big change doesn't come always from critical mass, but critical connections. And community organizing is a great opportunity to make critical connections with people in the community that are making lots of awesome things happen. I will go ahead and popcorn it to Veronica.
Now, Veronica, you're welcome to share and introduce yourself. I know you're kind of a fun addition to our panel.
Okay, so I am Veronica Brandon, and I'm the Economic Opportunity Specialist for the Office of Community and Economic Development in Washtenaw County. My pronouns is she, her, hers, and civic engagement for me is in my role. It is part of my role to ensure that there is equitable access to economic opportunity to people in our community, and that is my civic engagement. And I am going to pass it to Eli. If I answered everything.
Hi, folks. So my name is Ellie Savitt. I'm the prosecuting attorney for Washtenaw County. Pronouns are he, him, his. In some ways, my role, I guess, relates to civic engagement just by virtue of being a elected official. You got to be involved civically. You got to go out and, when you're campaigning.
Oh, Ellie, you're breaking up a little bit there.
Talk to people, and then when you're in office, you are. Am I breaking up?
Just a little bit, but
Okay,
you're back now. You're back to us now.
Okay, let me know if it gets too bad. I am in Colorado right now, so
Very nice.
You see the cabin in the background, and the internet is spotty up here, so I might go off video if it gets too bad.
No worries.
But in our office, at least, we try not to just sit in our office, run for re-election every 4 years, and be divorced from the community. One of the things that we really try to do, and I say we, our amazing Chief Assistant Victoria is also on here. Victoria, I'm popcorning to you next, just so you
just prepare.
We try to get out in the community and build partnerships who really build out alternatives towards the same ends. But from our perspective, we believe that if we are really going to rehabilitate folks, to get folks set up on the right track, it can't just be about jail and prison and punishment. It has to be about providing support, providing services. And to do that, we really need to build partnerships with community. We cannot do this on our own. So we really try to make that connection in the community and go out in the community, build these partnerships. One of our partnerships, for example, is with Washtenaw My Brother's Keeper, which takes folks in, young men of color that are at risk of being justice involved, and gives them mentorship, workforce opportunities, opportunities to engage in restorative practice. We can't do that as prosecutors. We need to work with community to do that kind of stuff. And that's just one example. We also try to be out in community events. One of my absolute favorite part of this job is doing expungement events, where we go out and help people expunge their old criminal records when they're eligible under the law. And we try to go out and meet people where they're at, not just say, well, you got to do this, come into the prosecutor's office. We go to community events, fairs. We'll co-host events with places like Washtenaw Community College. We were out at the Juneteenth festivals. We really want to meet people where they're at. And to me, that's how somebody that we represent the people, we should be coming out to them, not just waiting for them to come to us with what they need. And I apologize, I got distracted a little bit there. I had a family reunion and my great aunt was saying goodbye and did not realize I was done. So
work from home and zooming in is wonderful, but it gives us a little window into each other's lives, certainly. All right, Miss Victoria.
Hey Ellie, good to see your face after being gone all week. Tell your great aunt we said hello. Good morning, all. I'm Victoria Burton Harris. My pronouns are she, her, hers. My role in the county is serving at the pleasure of our elected prosecutor, Ellie, who appointed me to serve as his chief assistant prosecutor while he's in office. How my role relates to civic engagement, to kind of pick up where Ellie left off and to say it in a bit of a different way. We represent the people of the state of Michigan. That means everybody. And it's an enormous power to have. A county prosecutor's office, the ability to decide what to charge, when to charge, who to charge, and play a big role in determining how those charges will be disposed of. And with that enormous power, you must be responsible with it. And our philosophy is if we represent the people, we have to be with the people. We have to hear from them, listen and learn from them, because that is how we can ensure we are in all actuality serving them the way that they need to be and want to be served. My favorite part about participating in civic engagement and really being in community, building out partnerships to build out options to either keep people out of this system or to get them out in a way that does not include jail or prison. My favorite part is really just connecting with people. Ryan, you said something that really resonated with me, and you said that you enjoy giving people an opportunity to better their lives. I used to do that in a more direct way as a criminal defense attorney, and I loved every day of my job. It was a part of who I was and not just a job, it was my life. And being in public office does not afford me the same opportunities as being a private defense attorney. But I have teamed up with a wonderful person and partner in Ellie who shares a lot of what's in my heart and what moves both of us. Like he said, expungement events, being out in the community, what moves us is being able to connect with folks, hug the necks of folks that we serve, and not seeing them at their worst. As prosecutors, we only see people when they have committed a crime. That's how cases and files make it to our office. And I don't want to just sit in a community as beautiful as Washtenaw County and only see people at their worst. I want to see them at their best. So I want to go to parks for picnics or for sports activities between community members. I want to go to book and reading events hosted by organizations that pour into our children with reading skills. So just, really being physically connected and touching and being with people in our community, it brings me the most joy, and is my favorite part about my job.
Wonderful. Before we move on to Linda, I just want to jump in here real quick, Victoria. It's almost as if you were in the room for our earlier conversation, because we were talking about how there's like the bigger picture things and, voting and, you're representing folks. But then there's also, this active part with the community where you're just going to picnics in the parks or you're going to events, sporting events, and connecting with that community on a more personal level. Again, seriously, it's like you were in the room with us. That's fantastic.
Wonderful. I will go ahead and popcorn it over to Miss Linda Edwards-Brown.
Thank you, and hello, Victoria, and hello, my favorite prosecutor, and hello to all the rest of you too. It's just that I know those two folks. So my name is Linda Edwards-Brown. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I am a trustee for Pittsfield Charter Township. So what does that even mean? What is a trustee? So if you think about it like a city that has a mayor and has a city council, a trustee would be comparable to city council members. So the township is much smaller than a city like an Ann Arbor or an Ypsilanti. But we're also still responsible for adopting a budget, for setting ordinances, things like whether or not we'll allow marijuana dispensaries in the township. We oversee programs, we oversee services, we talk about lighting. There are just so many things that go into running a city or a township. And when I think about civic engagement and how it relates to my role, as a trustee, part of my role is direct service. So I give of my time and my energy to address the immediate needs of my community. I also feel that I have a social responsibility. So I have to consider the welfare of the folks who live in the township and what their needs are when I'm making decisions. I advocate and I educate, so I use my voice and my seat at the table to persuade others on the township board to make choices that benefit all of the community, that look at the community as partners, not as folks who don't have a say, but rather as people who are connected with us as elected officials. Now, in terms of other types of community engagement, I am very active in my sorority. Now, lots of folks think when you graduate from college, you stop being active in a sorority. Well, that is not the case with what is known as the Divine Nine. The Divine Nine are Black Greek organizations that advocate for the people who look like them. You know, these organizations were created out of a need for a community, a need to uplift the community, a need to be part of the community. And for me, we as a sorority are every week out in the community giving backpacks to kids who need them, sponsoring Easter egg hunt, just being present, helping with voter registration. We have a number of voter registration activities coming up in the next couple of months. Now, we're nonpartisan, so we're not telling people who to vote for, but we're telling people that they have a right to vote and helping them to understand that not only do you have a right to vote, but we're gonna help you get there. So if you need a Uber gift card so you can get to the polls, then we're gonna do that. If you need a coat because you're gonna be standing in line forever, then we're gonna do that. So for me, civic engagement is a responsibility, and it's a responsibility that I take wholeheartedly. You know, we often hear that phrase, to whom much is given, much is expected. I prefer to whom much is given, much is required. So civic engagement is about that responsibility to give back. It's not a question of will I or should I or can I. It's in what form will I, because it's core to who I am as a person and to my basic beliefs about how we function as a community. Okay, I'm done.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. We all really appreciate it. I know you can only just see me, but I promise there's a sea of young folks here listening to all your words. But just a couple of things before we open up to the larger group. I really appreciate, just drawing back to our earlier conversations, this idea of meeting people where they're at. We were talking about, okay, donating is a great way to be civically engaged, but what if you can't donate or you want to work with a community? How do you meet them? So thank you all for it's like we planned it. We just tied it all in perfectly. Thank you. So before we open up to our questions, do any of the young adults have any questions that they want to start us off with? No pressure. We've got a question in the back.
My name is Armika Ritchie. I'm not one of the youth, but I would ask Miss Linda, not to put you on the spot, but could you expound a little bit upon why it's important for some, because when you talked about the Divine Nine, you said that, you know, it's important for you to gather around and champion people to look like you sometimes. Why is that important for a group of Black, the Divine Nine specifically? Why is it important? Why is it okay for them to rally around people that look like them when others may not? Can you tell us a little bit why that is important for a group of Black people? I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. And you actually hit on it. You said when others may not. So if I am not committed to helping people who look like me, then who will? And if there should not be an expectation that others will pick up this mantle when I am perfectly capable of picking it up. You know, we have to go back to this sense of community where we helped one another, where we weren't in competition with one another. It's not about, you know, the brightest and the best, and I can say that being a Michigan grad, but it's about, I used to tell my daughter this all the time when she was in school. If the person sitting next to her didn't know how to read or didn't have breakfast or wasn't able to participate in sports because they didn't have the money to do so, then the fact that she had all those things or could do all those things was irrelevant, because we're a community. We grow and we live together. We are not an island. And I think that working with young people of color and showing them what they can be is vitally important. I spent over 40 years in the juvenile justice system, and I saw what happens when we don't help our young people. I saw children who were extremely talented, but who didn't have anyone to tell them that they were extremely talented, or anyone to mentor them or to help them to grow into the people that they could be. And I just think that as part of civic engagement or social responsibility, we have to help young people. You know, there's that cliche that children are our future, but it's true, because at some point, whether they're prepared or not, they are going to be the ones sitting in these chairs. They are going to be the ones that we're depending on to fix the roads, to have proper lighting, to be on the board of education. And if we haven't prepared them for that, then shame on us. And I think as the Divine Nine, again, we were born out of the need to have this sense of community, and we weren't able to be part of other sororities and fraternities. So we had to create our own. And in creating our own, we need to understand that we have a responsibility to those people who aren't able to go to the University of Michigan or Eastern Michigan University or Washtenaw Community College. Everyone has worth and everyone has value, but we have a responsibility to make sure that they understand that. So I hope that I answered your question.
Amen. I appreciate that. I completely agree with you, Ms. Linda, and thank you for touching on that historical context a little bit as far as why history is important to consider in civic engagement. Thank you for your service, too.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Who else has questions? Allison? Yeah, we'll just run you a microphone. Everyone's getting their steps in here.
So just a side comment, my cousin who is leaving on Monday actually worked for a law clerk, or a judge, but he was a law clerk at the Federal District Court. Mm-hmm. So I was wondering also like what kind of new civic engagements I can do as a young adult sort of thing. I don't know who wants to answer it, but anyone can.
Yeah. I'll pose it to the floor, a young adult wanting to know what they can do.
I would consider myself a young adult. I'm 24. I don't know what the cutoff is when I stop being young. But I think getting involved like where you're at. So like there's cool internships, especially in like formal opportunities, like you mentioned of your cousin, especially in Washtenaw County. Like we have a lot of that, and you can look for those. But also, like Derica Purnell talks about with regards to abolition, but with anything like that, building the world you want to create like has to start with like where you're at. So I know a high schooler in a state that has banned abortion, and she's worked with her peers to, in the high school, collect things like that you would need for all types of sexual health. So like condoms, Plan B pills, they're like getting like the mailing abortion pills and stuff, and they're just doing it. Like they don't need their school's thing, and like they're making it for their high school. So like seeing like what type of world you want to create, like what dreaming, like what goal of civic engagement you could have, like what that dream entails, and like pick a piece of that where you're at, so whether it's like your sports team, your school, I don't know how old you all are, but like
16 to 24.
College campuses have like always been the front of like tons of movements. Students have been at like the front of all that. So that's what I would say is like there are like great formal opportunities, and those are awesome. And then also you can just like do the thing. You can like do the cool thing.
Right. I see.
Yeah. I want to kind of add on to what Alex said that for what like when I was a younger person, I had the belief that you either needed to be able to start something brand new, to be able to address a problem that like, oh, well, no one's doing anything about this, so you need to start something. Or you need a bunch of qualifications to get in and do the work. And as I've grown, I've learned that like neither is really the case. There's opportunities to use not just your big skills, but also the things you're interested in learning, and find places to go. Washtenaw County has more nonprofits per capita than almost any other municipality in the Midwest for sure. There are so many different opportunities to contribute. And there's speaking of like writers and folks, activists that I love, Miriam Kaba wrote a really awesome set of questions that she asks when she gets upset about injustice in some way. And the first one is, what resources are out there to better educate myself about the problem? This is a highly educated town. There's lots of nonprofit resources. You also have the people on this call to be able to reach out to and ask for assistance and point to. Yes, I'm putting you all on the spot, public officials, to help contribute. But there's people who really want to help bring you into this world of helping folks. Who's already doing the work around a certain issue? When I wanted to start working on housing and homelessness, it wasn't out of nowhere that I ended up working with Avalon. It was because they were already doing the work in the community, and I found a place for myself to fit in. Third, do I have capacity to offer concrete support or help? Like, what are they asking for? For Avalon, it was, okay, someone needs to actually show up to these city council meetings and talk about how meaningful this is, or share that information, or do storytelling. I also am an artist. I do photography work, do like nature photography and things. And so, I care about the environment. How am I helping out with conservation efforts and environmental efforts? For me, it's through my photography. With Crows, it's through my organizing and facilitating, and hopefully just a lot of community love. With Avalon, it is all sorts of expertise and knowledge. There's all sorts of different ways and different kind of capacities that you can fill, and then just figuring out like how can you be constructive towards that. I think it's really easy to get caught up in doing things that feel like they provide like some immediate impact and gratification. I'm not immune to that either. And there's room for both of those, but if you want to find out, like the first step I think is really just knowing about what's going on and knowing about who's doing the work. A plug that I'll throw out for a great way to find that out is there's a awesome podcast by Molly Kleinman and Jess Letaw here in Ann Arbor called Ann Arbor AF. It's on all the podcast platforms. They've gone through. They used to regularly go through like Ann Arbor City Council meeting agendas, but would also talk about millages, all sorts of cool things that were happening. They would have debates about housing, or like, here's how you understand zoning, stuff that we don't learn in school. Even if you go to school for sometimes you don't learn that stuff. And so there's people making more accessible ways to learn about these things. There's lots of podcasts, zines, YouTube videos, books, and things with being able to learn more about it and figure out where you can fit in.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. I saw Miss Linda came off mute as well.
Yes, I just wanted to add, and both Victoria and Ellie talked about this, doing things in your community. So simply supporting those agencies that are already doing the work. Now, at Park Ridge Center, in a couple of weeks, they're having a picnic. And it's a picnic where they will be giving away backpacks and just allowing kids to have fun and celebrating Joseph Doolin, who was a principal in the area and the person who started the National African American Parent Involvement Day that is now nationwide. So as Ryan said, you don't have to create something new. You can simply participate in the things that are already out there and show your support for those organizations that are doing the work. And it's kind of like, how every place you go now, there's a sign that says help wanted. Well, all of these organizations need volunteer support. So if you go to these events, you're able to connect with the agencies that are doing the work, and maybe you can sign up to read to kids, or you can sign up to help clean up Park Ridge Community Center or the area around there. So I would just encourage you to actually go out in the community. I know when I was at the University of Michigan, I didn't know that some of these areas even existed. It was like I lived in this bubble. So I encourage you to go outside of that bubble and see the actual community that you're a part of.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to, so I echo all what Linda just said, and all that's been said previously, by the way. I just want to mention briefly one more thing on the more formal side. If you come across somebody just like in the course of reading about something, or you hear about some work that somebody's doing, and you're interested in getting involved, I think one of the biggest barriers is people just don't feel comfortable like reaching out. But just do it. Like, people's email addresses, people's phone numbers, they're generally, if they're engaged in community work, they're pretty easy to find. Just reach out. Say, I'm a young person. I'm interested in getting involved. Would love to hear more about what you do. Do you have time for a coffee or a Zoom meeting? You will be surprised at the positive responses that you get. It's very flattering when somebody says, like, I like the work you do. I'm interested in it. So people will often take the time. And for a lot of folks, I know, really lifting up a younger generation is something that they enjoy most about their work. So don't be shy in terms of reaching out to folks who are doing work that you might be interested in. It'll really pay dividends, and I think you'll be surprised by the positive response you get.
Yeah. And Ellie really practices what he preaches, because I found his email on the internet, and that's why he's here today. So thank you very much. Perfect example. What other questions do you all have? No pressure.
The educator in me says that if you all don't have questions, I will ask you questions, because I just think I want to know about you all.
Ryan, we have table numbers, so if you just want to give me a random number, I'll just call on random tables.
I'm curious. So let's go with table 3.
All right, table 3.
For table 3, does anyone at table 3 have a problem in the world that they are, really bothered by? Something that really, nags at them and really frustrates them?
We don't have a table 3, so Janae, you have so much power right now. You just hand that mic over.
Listen, 4 is the next number, so
Someone over here, anyone have any questions? Anything really, they're so eager
All
to
right.
share.
All right, Javi. No. All right, Miss Kennedy, I know you have feelings. Did you hear Ryan's question? No. Ryan, can you repeat your question, please, and Kennedy will answer?
Sure thing. My question was, do you have any particular issues or problems in the world that that animate you, that make you really angry, that you really want to contribute to solving?
So like going to like recent events with the abortion laws and all that, it kind of feels bad when you feel like you don't have any control and it's like nothing that you could really do to change things.
Yeah, that pessimism that Ryan was talking about, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that let's talk about it. I think that one of the things that is really critical that has helped me get out of a lot of despair for when we see attacks on bodily autonomy is this idea of hope being a discipline. It's something that you build every day. It's a muscle you exercise. And part of the way that I build up that muscle is by doing those steps that we talked about earlier, but also finding individual people to help. There's a concept called mutual aid, where it's a way, as much as I love organizations and work in a billion of them, apparently, I also know that there is sometimes nothing better to be able to connect directly to community members who need help. And while I don't always feel like I have the big answer, or I'm working on the big problem of how do I ensure, access to reproductive freedom for all birthing people is a really important thing for me. But how do I do that? When I get stuck on that, I fall back to, are there individual people that I can help? Are there people in need that I can help? There's a number of different mutual aid collaboratives, there's a number of different community groups that find ways to help folks. And as you start, banding together and finding people interested in doing those things, those opportunities to help show up. And it's not always, it's not a donation thing all the time. It's usually, oftentimes it's being able to cook meals, it's being able to, provide someone with, to help someone afford a phone, to help someone get out of a bad situation. Those things help me feel like I'm making progress towards those big problems. And sometimes it's really educating and advocating for those things there and saying, okay, well, I'm not good at public speaking, but I'm really good at doing social media posts. So maybe you're making cool stuff to go on stories on IG to tell people about where they can go for resources or what they can do for help. There's a million different ways to apply your talents and skills to these issues. And I think some of it is also just making sure that your voice is heard. I think that the less we talk about how dire and important these things are, the easier it is for people to ignore. And so some of those things is maybe just finding folks to help amplify your voice, because they're definitely out there. And hopefully that will help you feel like you have some more agency in dealing with issues.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ryan. I know Kennedy in particular was talking about social media and, getting word out there. So it sounds like that's one way you can kind of fight back that darkness, is what I like to call it. Because sometimes it does feel that way, certainly. What other questions do young adults have?
Hey, Tabitha.
And if I could respond
yes,
to that.
please.
Vote.
Yes.
Sometimes it may seem like your vote doesn't matter and you become discouraged because the person or the proposal that you voted for was not successful, but never stop voting. Voting is a form of civic engagement. And if you are too young to vote, if you fall in that 16-year-old age group, then write letters. Write letters to your legislators and let them know your perspective on these issues. If we sit on the sidelines and we don't exercise our right to vote, we are guaranteed that we will not get the outcomes that we want. So vote, vote, vote.
I want to, yes, Ms. Linda's absolutely correct. And for those where, you're not able to vote for any million number of reasons, surprisingly, one of the most effective things you can do is show up. show up to some place where people are in charge of doing something about it, and to be there and to know that like someone's paying attention. There are so many times where I currently live in Dexter. I've been the only citizen at least 20 city council meetings, whether they're on Zoom or something else. Showing up to the library board and saying, you know what, thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for protecting these queer books in this library. Telling the people who work for you, your public officials, what they're doing is good and what they're doing isn't good, means that they start to listen to you. And frankly, I never saw myself as the kind of person who was considered quote unquote important in community. It's a relatively new feeling to have folks going, well, what does Ryan think about this issue? And the only reason they're asking that is because they know that I show up, and they know that that if they make a vote on something that is going to negatively impact my communities, I'm gonna go, hey, can you please not do that? Hey, can you please stop? Can we come do this thing? We know that Ryan is going to show up. He's going to tell other people to show up, and he's going to nag about it on social media. He's going to live tweet this this council meeting, this planning commission. There are so many opportunities to just by your presence to be able to change the direction in which things go. Because all the people who are making decisions at the county level, at the city level, on library boards, school boards, they're people. They're not, imaginary kings sitting up on, on some great high that only consider certain things. And they will naturally be drawn to listen to the faces and voices of people who they recognize care about an issue. So that's one of the things that you can do, even beyond voting, is to be, visible, to be active, and to bring others with you. I think that the more folks you share, to let people know, like, hey, there's something weird going on out in Chelsea with this, and we want to come out and show support. More folks showing up to that meeting is going to let people know, oh, this is something important. I'm going to give this more consideration. It really is that basic sometimes, and it doesn't feel like it should be that way, but it absolutely has been in my experience.
Absolutely, just being a presence in that civic engagement, that community field, absolutely. What other questions do we have for our panel? Yes.
So I have a question. This is maybe for our organizers, though anyone should feel free to jump in. If one of our young adult participants notices something that they feel like is a problem, and I'm thinking hyper locally here, not national scale issues, what would you say is the best way to start getting involved or start making change on that issue?
I would say two things that Ryan has already touched on. Like one, either mutual aid. Like if it's, someone is sleeping somewhere and that's the problem, how can they get a ride to Avalon? What immediate resources can you provide for that? And then two, find out who's in charge. And then like Ryan said, show up. So if we're thinking hyper locally, if it's like something at a school, like who's in charge of the school? If it's something at a park, like when is the Parks and Rec department meeting? Ryan has more organizing experience than me, but I think I would figure out one of those two things. It's usually probably both, but mutual aid and then elevate to judge. And then you might run into stuff. Like that's what happened with Crows is the city council was doing something. They had like a vague resolution to do something. And we wanted it to be, Ryan was the founding, wanted it to be done in like a very specific, imaginative way. And then that's kind of the path up we took. Ryan?
Yeah, I think that that key point about like asking around about, who can tell me about this is a great question to ask, especially if you're asking, local officials. We talk about the people who are elected a lot, but there's lots of folks whose job it is as staff members to help answer your questions. Like their job is to help you figure this out. For teachers and professors, they love connecting you to this kind of stuff. Like I, in the few times where I've been, blessed with the opportunity to teach and lecture, I love getting those kinds of questions. I go out of my way to answer them. And I think that there is like you kind of need to understand that there's a lot of different people who have different impacts on those things, and you're not going to figure it all out right away. So being able to ask about what this thing is, it's like, hey, why do the kneeling buses always break down for disabled riders on AATA? Who do I talk to about that? You find out, okay, well, maybe I can talk to the AATA board or Transportation Commission or something else. Or you find like a busybody like me who's plugged into a bunch of stuff, and we help triage and find you someone to help you become a successful community rabble rouser. I think that there's a lot of different ways to kind of approach it, but I think the hyperlocal way to think about things is really effective. In these spaces, I'm very intentional about using the phrase neighbors, because I think that there's a quote by James Baldwin where he talks about how the world is held together by the love of very few people, and some of that is that you go outside when you see something unfortunate happening, to be able to recognize that could be you, that could be you and your family, your friends, your brothers, your sisters, and the more you can think about those local things as, this is something happening with my neighbors, this is something happening with people that I am interwoven with, then you can just look for solutions among other people who are woven together in that same cloth. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity to build on those things and to look for some of those nonprofits locally and say, hey, I want to know about what can be done on this. They'll be more than happy to help point you in the right direction.
So before we open up to questions again, I just want to pull this out of the abstract. Our wonderful panelists have talked about going out into the community, going to nonprofits and volunteering your time, getting involved in that way. But that's kind of abstract. So what would somebody do if they wanted to take that advice? What would be your first step? And I will totally call on people. Yeah, you can answer, Allison. Go ahead. We'll bring you a mic.
Hi, I'm Allison. My friend also works for Jeff Irwin in Lansing. So I'd probably do a bake sale, or I would try to. I'm also wearing a youth volunteer shirt. It's youth volunteer club I used to do. So I'd probably do that.
Okay, wonderful. Now, Jayla, I keep catching your eye, so I'm going to come over to you. So what would be your first step? We'll bring you over a mic.
I guess if I knew somebody who, or I don't know, even DMing someone on Instagram, I've done a couple things by that. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
I don't know, I Canva, Pixar, those are my apps for real. I love those. I've made a couple graphics. I think it's really fun.
Yeah.
Even if it's something that's small, because I'm kind of a shy person. I'm not really one to, even emails I don't like sending. So I think that's pretty small, but I think it's worthy to do.
Right, no, that's excellent. I mean, I know of an organization kind of close to us right now that's always looking for infographics and ways to present. So that's a wonderful way, using that social media that we've talked about. Any other ideas of how we would take the advice given by the panel? So what about Google, guys? Would we Google? Yeah, it's fine. Wonderful. All right, other questions that we have for the panel?
I have a thing. For the first time in the last few years, with all the violence against different groups, and constantly African American people, I for the first time I stood on the corner and I yelled and I protested in that way with signs and just and I think a lot of us did that for the first time in the last few years too. I was enraged enough. I was moved to stand and yell. Does that put pressure when groups come together and they protest in that way? Does that put pressure on policymakers, and is it enough to spark change, do you think? Is that powerful in your mind? Mr. Savit.
I was going to say, Mr. Savit, this seems like a very, very pointed question.
Yeah. No, I absolutely think it can be. I mean, look, public officials are human beings, and they might act like they don't hear, they don't see what's going on outside, but trust me, they do. So I think it can absolutely make a difference. There's no question that I think historically mass social movements have been sparked in the streets, and change has been won in the streets. Does it mean that it's always going to be successful? No, right? I mean, and I think if you want to bring about change, it should be sort of a all of the above approach to things. Yes, protest, but yes, also vote, and yes, get involved with mutual aid and get directly involved, because you can't always rely, frankly, on politicians to do things, right? But absolutely, I think political protest demonstrations are effective, and even if they don't directly impact the politicians, there are also good ways to build out networks and co-conspirators really moving forward. A good example of this, I think, is we talked about reproductive rights, and look, protesting on the diag is not going to change Samuel Alito's mind about abortion. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. But when there's that energy and folks are coming together and taking action steps and starting to raise money for abortion funds so people can travel to states where it is still protected, that's something that I think protests and demonstrations can also help to build. So, that's a long-winded way of saying yes, and I think it's helpful for a number of reasons that should absolutely be part of an all-of-the-above approach.
Awesome. Thank you. This idea of attacking everything from all angles.
Ryan, if you want to say a little more about what you put in the chat, our group could not quite read enough of it.
Oh, sure. Sorry about that. I was agreeing with Ellie's point, is that there is a direct line between the protests in 2014 on Ora Rosser's death to police violence and the success that the Crows Coalition was able to pull together along with the city of Ann Arbor, to the point where almost every city council candidate, approves the Crows plan, and they allocated $3.5 million towards unarmed response. A completely unfathomable idea that wouldn't have been even imaginable, a few years ago. But all of the protests that didn't seem like they were, bearing fruit, built the steps to get there. So we have a independent police oversight commission, for example, now as a result of those protests and the sustained activism of folks there. Everyone has a first animating event, whether it be watching the death of Michael Brown, or whether it be what happened with Ora, or whether it be George Floyd in 2020, or Ahmaud Arbery succumbing to racist violence. Everyone has these different things, but for me, what really helps is to remember that protests aren't always directly successful in the moment, but they plant seeds they plant and cultivate seeds that you can grow to something great in the future. There's a quote from a sci-fi writer that I grew up loving, Ursula Le Guin, that's essentially about capitalism, but it's about a lot of other things that feels really important to me. It says that if the powers in these places feel inescapable, so too do the divine right of kings. Any human power can be resisted and changed by other human beings. And it's really important to remember that there's so many of these things that feel like they could never have been done, get done. They get done when we find ways to connect with each other, when we find ways to care about each other, and really put in some of that communal work and labor, so that it's not a few superheroes, leading to a particular change. That kind of, growth doesn't happen overnight, but, realizing those emotions that you feel from those protests, building on it with, learning and study and figuring out what kinds of things you need to know to affect change, and talking with others about it, reading stuff together with people, watching, sharing the YouTube videos for a panel that seems really cool, looking at some of those infographics and looking through the sources and making sure that they're legit. All that stuff prepares you for when there's time to be able to take action. And yes, we can pressure electeds to do some things and make choices. But sometimes it's pressuring individual voters and pressuring communities to think about something seriously. Your presence is a signal not just to those on the ballot. It's also a signal to the people who show up to work and staff every day. It's a signal to the people who are being oppressed that you care about them, and that they are not alone. And that's something that is hard to measure, but immensely valuable.
Absolutely. You got a woo. I'm not sure if you heard it, but we heard it here. No, that there's this idea of oppression, and what's so insidious about oppression is that you don't think you can do anything. But I really appreciate the quote, it's a human power. These systems of oppression were built by people, and we are people who want to change them and rebuild them. Definitely a little bit of light in that darkness, as any conversation with Ryan. But we've got a few minutes left. Any other questions?
I'm coming with a mic to Saran.
Wonderful.
Hi, I was wondering, this was kind of mentioned, but sort of how sometimes it can feel like no changes are being made, or it's easy to feel pessimistic. So how do you maintain optimism for the future?
And I don't think we've heard from Miss Victoria. Oh, I'm sorry, Alex. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
So I would say, for me at least, I get in those moments just like all the rest of us on this screen, I'm sure. And what helps me to find my hope again is being in community and also reading. I'm currently reading a Marian Kaba book along with like 3 or 4 other ones. But reading about transformative justice, reading about the work that my ancestors have done before me, and being reminded that, at least for me, it's not about getting to an end goal necessarily in my lifetime. For me, it's about adding layers of brick that pile on top of the foundation those before me have already laid. And that's helpful for me because it puts me in the space of not trying to get to, like I said, an end result right now. And that really helps me to not be discouraged by saying like, oh, okay, I should not expect to see a win right now. So this darkness that I feel surrounded by when I feel just completely hopeless, this is just a moment in time that I will move beyond that. I will, go in community with folks. And when I say go in community, I'm not just referring to limiting yourself to going down the street to your neighbor. I came from Detroit. I oftentimes just need to go back to Detroit to be around a whole lot of people that look like me, and understand some of the things that I'm frustrated with. I will leave and go sit by water with folks in my community, just to say we need to get away from it all. Going to the Atlantic Ocean and feeling the spirit of my ancestors, on the land beneath my feet. Like that to me is very powerful, and it helps me to reset, and it reminds me of why I'm here, what I'm supposed to be doing, and understanding that, a part of the system wants us to be downtrodden, wants us to feel bleak and all hope is gone, because then that's the easy way for us to give up and to stop pushing back against the oppression. So understand that you can't, when you get in those moments, you cannot stay in those moments, and find people that will give you that hope. Young people for me are also a huge source of hope, because young people just do not care, and every generation gets stronger and bolder. I mean, when I think about my grandparents' generation and how I thought that they really are not messing around. The young people nowadays seem to one up, my grandparents, when I thought oh no, that was pretty badass what, our ancestors were doing. Young people are like, yeah, it was, and I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna do two or three things more to top that. And just the creative energy that you get from young people, it's unmatched. And that's the way it should be, because they see the world from a different angle and through a different lens. And so they have different ideas, things that we've not thought about before, and things that we have but think about in a slightly different way. So look behind you, look in front of you, and look around you when you have those moments.
Wow.
Can I piggyback off of what Victoria said?
Yes, absolutely.
I would like to say that because I agree with everything that Victoria said, but along with that, look at the small victories. That helps. Like for instance, with protests, look at the victory of you had that many people come out in support of the same thing. That's not a common thing to get that many people to agree on the same issue. So that's an accomplishment in itself. And to get people to come out, that's an accomplishment in itself. The fact that you're volunteering for the cause, that's a victory. The fact that you actually volunteered, that you reached out. If you reach out to a elected official or staff for an organization or something, to discuss your issue and they actually took the time to listen, that's a victory. So with the pessimistic part, it can help besides the larger part of going around people in an area that looks like you or going to the water, reading a book. All of those are wonderful, great things that really help, but also focusing on what went right rather than what went wrong, because big change doesn't happen overnight. It happens by small things happening over time to where when you look at the big picture, it winds up being a big change, but it didn't start out as a big change. It started out really slowly.
Wonderful. Wow, thank you both so much for that. I'm feeling more optimistic myself just hearing that, so thank you. And I will point out, Victoria, a lot of what she was saying is grounded in self-care and grounding yourself. So for our panelists, I've been kind of harping on our young adults on self-care and wellness. So thank you for pushing my message there. But that is all the time that we have for our panel. If we want to give them a round of applause. Thank you all so much again for donating your time as an act of civic engagement. We really appreciate it here, and it's wonderful to have so many folks from Washtenaw County talk to our young adults who are living in Washtenaw County and a part of this community. So thank you all sincerely for your time. Go Blue, yes.
Hi, my name is Catherine, and I'm from the League of Women Voters, and I'm here with Trudy and Jeff, also from the League of Women Voters. And we're going to talk today about why vote and hopefully come up with some reasons why you would want to vote, and then also talk about youth voting, and then end up with looking to see if you can register, if you are registered, if you're interested in absentee voting, and any questions you personally have about registering to vote, including, I'll talk about that too, like upcoming places and things you can vote for. But first, I'm really curious. I've been connected with Tabitha, or they reached out to us, and so I looked you up online, but I really don't know that much about your program. So I'm curious, like, is it almost over for the summer? Is this just a regular day in the life of SummerWorks, or?
Next Friday is our last day. It's 10 weeks long. It's a job employment program with Tabitha and Ben and other cool people.
And so everybody's working, and on Fridays it's other things?
Yes, so some folks do internships, and some folks just do mentorship and come to professional development sessions, but Fridays are typical health sessions, so we're usually here on Fridays.
Yeah, okay, and everyone's from Washtenaw County, is that right? Yeah. So, pardon? Yeah, I was very happy to get Chella's. I love that place. So if we talk first of all about why vote, and the poster here says, you can make a change, use your voice, vote. And that's absolutely true. I think sometimes we feel like it doesn't matter and that things are way beyond our control. But if we really go down to the very basics, we do have the power to vote for people, and we do have the power to be informed. And the youth vote is a really powerful thing. So I hope you can feel that, by the time this is over too. And here, this is just some things we're going to talk about today. What I'd like to start out doing is you talking to each other, like, what issues would you even care about when it comes to voting? Like, what kind of candidate would be someone who speaks to you? What issues would they be on your side about, let's say? And then looking at some young voter statistics, and what can I do to make a difference? We have some ideas for things anybody can do, and certainly as a young person, suggestions on concrete actions you can take. And then we'll look at the registering to vote. And registering to vote has changed a lot in the past, let's say 4 or 5 years. It's now easier than it ever was. It's easier to vote than it ever was. And all of those things are really in our favor. The League of Women Voters was founded because women couldn't vote. And we say that we earned the right to vote. We were not given the right to vote. And that's, I think, voting is always something you kind of have to fight for. And one important way to do that is to vote for candidates who speak to you and who care about the same things that you do. Okay, so if you ask yourselves, and we can talk, I thought you could just talk at your tables. What issues do I care about that you think about civic engagement on a big scale? Like, is it the environment? Is it college affordability? Is it housing affordability? Is it LGBTQ rights? Is it reproductive rights? Is it any kind of other freedom that you feel strongly about? Like, what is important to you as a young person, or just as who you are, that would be something that you would care about to see if somebody who's running for office feels that way too? So I'd like you to just take, I don't know, a couple of minutes at your tables and talk. What issues do I care about? And then I'm going to be asking you what you talked about. So if you just take a minute, ask each other. Okay, in just a minute, I'm going to be asking someone from each table if you can just volunteer what you were talking about, and then we can get some ideas up here to see how are people thinking.
Catherine, you want to just go to each table and have...
Oh yeah, that'd be great. Oh, thanks. Yep, if somebody's willing from each table to just say, oh, we talked about X and Y, or whatever it was, whatever issues that came to mind.
Hi, my name is Haley. So
Hi.
We talked about reproductive rights.
Reproductive rights.
Equal rights.
Okay,
and
so reproductive rights, equal rights. Mm-hmm. Okay. Great. Another table?
We talked about reproductive rights, immigration, gun
Immigration,
control, minority rights.
Minority rights. Okay, so again, reproductive rights, immigration, minority rights, okay.
My name is Muniba. We talked about reproductive rights, a little bit about college affordability.
College affordability, new one here. Anything else? Anything else? No? Okay. Food rights. And what, like, could you just expand on that? Oh, food security. Accessibility to healthy food, to food and healthy food. Okay, great. Another table.
Somebody already said this, reproductive rights, but we also said funding for education.
Pardon?
Funding for education.
Funding for education. Okay, great.
This
There-
table wants to share too.
Pardon? Yeah, a couple more tables. Hopefully someone would be willing to say what y'all talked about.
No eye contact. Oh. All right, then that sounds like.
You guys can go first.
Okay. We talked about racial justice.
Racial justice.
Social inequities and systematic inequities. Racism in regards to Black people, especially Black women. Poverty.
So-
And access to medical care.
Access to medical care and
Yeah,
equity, and you said racial justice, especially for Black women. Did I miss something?
We also talked about poverty. There are a lot of
Poverty. Oh yeah, right. Okay. Okay, I'm trying to sort of say every additional thing that comes along. And was there someone at this table that is going to share?
What issues do you think?
Gun laws, gun control.
Gun laws, gun control.
Exactly.
That
is such a big one too.
Yeah. Pardon? Oh yeah, Black Lives Matter. Yep. And I'm going to say right now, what I hear from you is I would call it pretty representative of what people care about, not just young people. But I think the young person's voice is so important. You're the future. You're the voters now, and you're hopefully leaders of the future. And what you care about is really, really important. And who you vote for is really, really important. Do they share your views on these issues? And of course, we've seen, a lot of action lately about things like reproductive rights. Voting rights have been in the news with the whole idea that the 2020 election wasn't fair. And so that continues to be in the news. And so one way to deal with that has been, and from the League of Women Voters standpoint, is to reduce the rights of voters, to take away the ease of voting, voter restrictions. And as someone, from the League of Women Voters, I feel really strongly about that, because we go back again to women didn't get the right to vote, they fought for it. And it took a really long time. And you think like it's the most normal thing in the world, why couldn't another human being vote? And then of course, you come to racial equity for also, like, why can't, it says it in the Constitution, that people have the right to vote, and yet somehow it keeps being, taken away from us, or we have to really fight for it. Did you have?
Yeah, we've just been touching and kind of like dancing around this issue of voter suppression and like voting, and we've been explicitly talking about voting rights. I'm just curious what the young adults, what do you guys know about? What do you all know about voter suppression, voter rights, things like that?
Yeah, like maybe even in your families, are people voting? Is it hard for them to vote? Do they feel like it's worthwhile to vote? All of these things, you might be surrounded by, people who are talking about this. So it's just, something to think about. Oh, was there a comment back here?
A little while ago, we talked about not being able to get time off of work to vote. I'm not old enough to vote yet, but I know, at least for my parents, it's kind of been a struggle, especially if you work odd hours. So sometimes you'll have to like really inconvenience yourself in order to go and vote. Fortunately, the polls are there for a pretty long time, but it's still an issue for a lot of parents. and a lot of people who should be able to vote.
Absolutely, absolutely. Not everyone can go on the second Tuesday of either August or November between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. to vote in person. You may not be able to do that. So luckily, or not luckily, through hard work, an initiative was passed, was it 2018? 2018, so you can have no excuse absentee voter. Like, I can vote. It used to be that you had to be old or on vacation, basically, I think, to be able to vote absentee. And you had to fill out a form in person, and now that has become much, much easier. And anybody can vote absentee for whatever reason they choose. And in the most recent election, which was in August, right now, August 2nd was the primary election in Michigan. So I was a poll worker, and in my precinct, we had 413 people that came and voted, and double that who voted absentee. So you can see how powerful the absentee vote is, too. And right now, the League of Women Voters is a co-sponsor of something called Promote the Vote, which would put into the Michigan Constitution the right to vote in person early, 9 days ahead of leading up to the election. That would be in the Constitution. So then if you have an erratic work schedule, or if you're helping somebody else, something comes up and you can't go on election day, but you still want to go in person, this is something that would be then a right for you. Yes.
Hi, I'm Allison once again. My friend actually worked on League of Women Voters. She went to my high school. And so.
Wonderful.
Yeah, she goes to Wesleyan right now. But I always do absentee, so I don't have to go in person because my parents are very conservative with COVID. So we always do absentee, and I think that works out very well. But sometimes I don't get my ballot. I'm like, oh shoot, what's my ballot?
All right. So yeah, do you get your ballot in time? So these are all questions that we can talk about too at the end, to make sure that you understand what the procedure is, because really it's complicated. And when I was a poll worker on August 2nd, there were so many questions that I couldn't answer. It was my first time doing it, because there's a lot of, everybody has their own situation, and the goal is to help everybody be able to vote. And so dealing with all these different situations, such as absentee ballots. So, and we come back to, the reason you vote is because you care about something. And hopefully the issues that you care about, you can find a candidate to support who supports those things. And then here's just some, oh yes.
Hi, my name's Krista.
Hi.
I don't have a question or anything. I just have a comment. But I guess I was always raised in a family where we always voted because that was we saw it as a civil responsibility. And I just wanted to add that with that, my mom always taught me if you don't vote, you're not letting your voice be heard, and therefore you don't really have the right to complain about the issues if you're not putting your voice out there. So I just thought I'd share that.
Yeah, it's one way to have a voice, even if it seems really small. And here's, if we look at then the power of youth voting, not just you as an individual, but you as a group. And again, of course, everybody's unique. But democracy really cares a lot about that every generation. I mean, we just don't want, people over the age of 60 or 70 making all the decisions for us, right? Your future's ahead of you. So, the country should care about what you have to say and what you think. And if we look at just some statistics from Washtenaw County, so here in 2016, the election for president was decided by less than 10,000 votes. And voter turnout in Washtenaw County was really high for young people, which was a really surprising thing. That's generally young people are the people with the lowest voter turnout. So this made a difference in 2016. And it makes a difference all the time. And so, the youth vote, if it can, if you're getting out there and voting, it makes a difference. And so, in Michigan in 2016, voted, so the vote went to Hillary Clinton, but by only that many votes. So, did I misspeak? Yeah. Okay, so why vote? Because even a small number of votes can make a big difference. And just for example, too, in the August primary, one of the city council candidate seats was decided by like 150 votes. And you know, your city council makes a lot of decisions about your daily life. So and one thing I want to say too is most of your daily life is generally affected by what happens locally. Your vote for president is of course important, or your vote for governor, but votes for city council and county commissioner are probably more important for how your daily life is affected. Okay. Yep, so over 80% of 18 to 21-year-olds registered voters in Washtenaw County voted in the 2020 election, more than any other age group. And that was partly the result of making it easier to vote. I know that on the University of Michigan campus, they had several polling places, including at the Art Museum, and that place was busy all the time. And so making it easier for students to vote made a difference. Okay, so now I just want to pause a little bit and ask you how old you are. So if you're 18 or older, can you raise your hand? Okay. If you're 17 and a half or older? Okay. And if you're under 17 and a half? Okay. So when we're talking today, if you're 17 and a half or older, you can register to vote, because that means you'll be old enough to vote in November. If you're under 17 and a half, can you still register? No. Okay, but we can talk to you about the process, and then as soon as you turn 17 and a half, you can register, and then you'd be ready to vote in the next election. Older than 18 or 20, then you're all set. Okay. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about, before we get to the actual registering to vote, I want to talk about other things that you could do to make a difference in your community. And really by making a difference too, I mean also things that, not just for others, but what do you care about? How can you act on something that you care about? Let's see. Okay, I'm going to hand these out, but basically it's this poster, 10 things you can do. I think it's easier to look at your tables. So Trudy and Jeff are going to hand these out. So, and at your tables, so first I'll just talk briefly. I mean, you can see what's on that sheet, but then talk at your tables, like which one of these things sounds like something that you might be interested in doing. Here, let's see. I only made 20 copies, so it could be something that you would share too. Okay, so I'll just mention what you're looking at right now. 10 things you can do to protect voting rights and democracy. Start with the mindset that you can make a difference. So one thing is to use your voice. Send messages to elected representatives. They care. There's people in their offices that are busy responding to emails and telling you thank you for your email. And they tally those things up. Oh, you're in favor of something, you're against something, that the elected representatives care about that. Vote and urge family and community members to vote. Not only do it for yourself, but demonstrate to others. Work the elections. Lots of young people, you don't have to be, I think you don't have to be 18 to be able to work an election, and you get paid. And it's one day of really hard work, 2 or 3 times a year, but it's a very interesting process to see what goes on. Register voters, like we're doing today. Hopefully there will be some people that that we can register, and you can know that now you're ready. Stay informed. Read reliable, especially local news sources. How can you know about what's going on in your community? Reach out to people, talk to them about voting. Spread the word. Support integrity in government. Join a peaceful, law-abiding, nonpartisan organization. League of Women Voters is one of those, and there are many. So if you just take a minute to talk at your tables about which of these things, does anything look like something that you could do, that you would be interested in doing? Okay, in another minute, if we could go around and see if what things on this sheet people maybe felt spoke to them, or something that you might want to or feel like you're able to do.
I'm gonna pick on this table. Mohammed, I saw you were looking.
Okay, so I'm Mohammed. So
Hi.
Hi. So I would say maybe stay informed and then support integrity in the government.
Great. Stay informed. MLive is probably the biggest local news source. They even have a twice weekly, old-fashioned paper that comes to your door if you want it. But the Michigan paper too, the University of Michigan paper. There's another source called Bridge magazine. It's online. They do a lot of good reporting on local issues. And what was the other one you said? And then
Stay informed.
But there was another one. Support integrity in government. Yep.
I feel like the easiest one to do is probably like spread the word. Like we said earlier, you could post stuff on social media, which is probably the easiest. It may even be easier than having a face-to-face conversation with people sometimes.
That's a really good idea.
Autumn, where would you find things that you might want to post or spread the word about?
Like different, like you can look them up on Instagram, different types of people, like I think change.org and stuff. I think they're on Instagram. A lot of other government people too on Instagram.
Absolutely. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can just reposting.
Right. Or follow, right? Like, I guess that too. Yeah. Okay. Another table.
All right, Ruba, what stuck out to you here?
So probably stay informed, because it's very important to be to know what's going around. And then I would say use my voice to send to the president, senators.
Yeah, that'd be great. It seems like such an easy thing to do, but it actually doing it is another thing, and it feels great, if you've gone to that, and they really do keep track of who contacts them. Yes, hi.
I was just gonna say, if you're able to vote, because that is really important, but
the other things are important too.
Okay, yes, if you're able to vote. Oh, so this might be a good time to ask, how many people here have voted? Hooray! Yay, okay. And hopefully everybody here who's eligible will do it in the next election. Okay, any questions or anything about, what's up here, or anything you wanted to ask me? Yeah.
We might cover this later, but it does say vote. But how do you register to vote absentee?
Great. Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Okay,
yes.
awesome, yeah.
So perfect. I love your question. Any other questions right now? Oh yes, back here.
As an individual, I'm able to. It's nothing illegal about telling people who I think they should vote for. Advocate for the candidate that I think is best. I can do that as an individual. There's nothing wrong with that. If I was an organization, then I'd try to, stay neutral and just give information about the process. But I'm big on telling people who I think is the best candidate.
And really, that's probably just as powerful or more powerful than TV ads or something. Is hearing from someone you trust. Well, who are they thinking of voting for? Yeah. Great. Anything else, people? Oh yeah.
Hi, I'm Allison. I also think another thing that works for me personally is just the signs around town being like Sushing Democrat for like whatever. I know Sushing is an example, but I think a lot of time people have signs around town. It just maybe picks who I want to vote for, but I'm not really sure.
Okay, so yard signs. And so if yard signs make a difference, then if you have a candidate that you support, get a yard sign. Put it up.
Or a T-shirt.
Or a T-shirt.
A walking advertisement.
Yeah. They would be thrilled to provide you with a yard sign. Okay, and then one thing I wanted to mention too, but first of all, anything else? Anything else people want to mention or ask? Yes? Oh, okay. So I do want to, so I'm going to show you a voting site called Vote 411, which is by the league, and then we're going to get into voting. Sorry. So one way to find out about candidates is to go to, and issues, like petitions or things that have made it to the ballot, is to go to vote411.org, and you can punch in your address and find out what's on your ballot. And then the League of Women Voters asks all candidates who are on the ballot to answer some basic questions, 3 or 4 basic questions, and then you can compare their answers side by side. So whoever's running for mayor or county commissioner, and just for example, right now in Washtenaw County, because of the American Rescue Plan Act, one other thing, and then just increased tax revenue, the county is loaded, let me just tell you, loaded with money that they are going to spend somehow. So it'd be great if they could spend it on something that you care about. And also, the state just passed, I think it's the largest per pupil funding for public education that they've ever had. And so hopefully that then makes a difference in the lives of, of high school students and elementary school students. Okay, so Vote 411, register to vote. Or you can register to vote there, but the find out what's on your ballot is very helpful. Okay, so now we're going to talk about actually registering to vote. And what we're going to do, there's a QR code up here, and there's also, we have buttons that have a QR code. And what this QR code is, it takes you to the Michigan Secretary of State's website for registering to vote. And some of you may clearly are already registered to vote, but it should tell you that then too. And so what I'm hoping everybody can do, everybody who's 17 and a half or older, if you click on that take that QR code and see what it tells you, and then if you're able to today, we can help you register to vote online, and we also have paper forms. Sometimes the online thing is just a little bit wonky for whatever reason. You might not have everything you need to vote on or to register online, but you can fill out a paper registration, which we also have. So if you take your phones and go on, use that QR code, and I'm really curious to see what it tells you. And Trudy and Jeff are going to walk around too and facilitate. Yeah. And then I think I'm going to ask either Trudy or Jeff to speak about absentee voter registration. Right, so she had, one of the people had a question, how do you register to vote absentee? So.
You can go online and apply for a ballot or submit a written application.
So one quick thing about absentee voting, and this was something I think we just confirmed today. Like, you can go online and do that, but I think you have to wait until 75 days prior to the election, which would be Trudy, August 20-something. Right, so I don't think you'll be able to, or you won't be able to register to vote absentee online today, but you can fill out a form. So then the question becomes, are you registered? So in order to register to vote absentee, you have to first be registered. So are you registered? Can you get registered? If you're not, can you get registered right now? And if you want to vote absentee, how can you do that? So what I'd like to do now is let's just mingle and see if we can just address questions as people have them.
All right, for folks, is anyone here not registered to vote and would like to register to vote by a show of hands? I've got 1, 2, 3. Wonderful, thank you. All right, so actually for folks who want to register to vote, could we have you go to that back table, that empty table right there? That way they're all kind of condensed in one place. Good idea.
Yes, absolutely. So Sydney asks, if you, by registering to vote now, like what are you registering to vote? Like what election? Once you register to vote, you're registered for every election from now until you move. So the next election is the November election. So that would be the first thing that you'd be able to vote for. And there's a lot on that ballot. For example, the governor, the attorney general, the Secretary of State, and then locally, who's ever going to be your mayor and who's going to be on the Board of Commissioners, for example. So another important question, she said she just voted. So did you vote in August then? Yeah, okay. If she tries to re-register, won't that cancel it out? I think it won't let you re-register. It should tell you that you're already registered. So let's check that in a second. And then it should tell you. Yes, great. So let's see. So when you try and
Miss Krista. So like on surveys, you don't do it like we do employers and mentors. She does a lot of data with that. Just brings the program of doing like helping and being impactful in the way we want. Just collecting that data, but she just got hired on as a fellow, so she's gonna do like so basically she's gonna do the same thing with data now, but it's a program full-time capacity. I should know for exact title, but. I think on the Washington County side, just how Zoe was the, actually, we just hired Zoe's replacement. Armika is gonna be, the program manager on the US side now.
Sade, do you know Sade? Do you know Sade?
I don't know what Sade is doing. I was not here.
Do you know Sade? Oh, she was good for both of you. Oh, she was a great person. She reminded me a lot of you, Jessica.
Oh, thank you. I've heard very wonderful things about Sade, so that's very kind of you.
Yeah.
all catch up and see.
Okay. Okay, I think most people are either finished or finishing up. I just put this slide up here as information also that, about voting absentee. And at least one person registered to vote today, which is, oh, yay. So at least one, maybe more. So that's just wonderful. And some people had already voted, for example, in the August election. A lot of really young people who are too young to vote, but hopefully are getting ready. And of course, the next big date is November. And you can vote absentee, of course, vote in person. And in addition to candidates on the ballot, there will hopefully be something that the League of Women Voters is sponsoring called Promote the Vote to ensure that people have access to early in-person voting and that certain safety precautions are in place for certifying elections. So once an election, once everybody's filled out their ballot, ballots are eventually collected and certified by the county. It's always voting in Michigan is very, very local. So, for example, in my precinct, yeah, we had 413 people come in person, double that online, or absentee voting, and then all of that information goes to the city of Ann Arbor, which then goes to the county, and it's the county's numbers that are certified. And people literally go through all these registration tapes and make sure that numbers add up, and if something doesn't add up, they check into it. I sat and watched that process too. And so those are the kinds of things that happen, and that process, we want to make sure it stays secure and it's not run by elected officials, that it's run by people who are qualified to do this, and it can't be challenged by elected people, that these results that are certified stay certified. So all of those things that, anyway, hopefully on the November ballot, there will be something called Promote the Vote. And there's probably, it looks almost certain that a reproductive rights petition will also be on the ballot. So for those of you who expressed interest or concern about that, those are two things to look for in addition to candidates on the ballot. So now I'm wondering if we have any other questions or anything that people just want to say or...
So I'm wondering how the folks who are too young to vote are feeling just in this conversation, or what thoughts they're having. I feel so bad for the 16-year-old sitting next to me.
Yeah, so, yeah, I don't know. Does anybody who's not going to be able to vote in November have anything that you want to share? Oh, yeah, so back here? Yeah. So hold on. Oh, are you also? Yeah, okay.
Haley, why don't you go ahead while we wait for Autumn to get a mic?
Okay, my name is Haley, and I guess I'm kind of sad that I can't help make them change the stupid law that they just did for reproduction rights.
Okay, one thing to remember about that's that Michigan still, if Michigan has its own law, then the federal law can't change that. So that's something, but so yeah, she's angry that she can't vote for something that she cares about. Okay.
I'm upset too because I can't use my voice, but I feel like what I want to do is I want to help run it. I've been thinking about it lately, help run an election, so maybe I can help other people, help myself and other people.
Oh, interesting. So like work for a campaign. Is that what you mean? Or like work the polls? Work the polls, yeah. Working the polls. That might make you feel better, Haley. Be there on election day to just to do something, do your part. And really you get paid, it's not bad. So long day, but. Oh, how do you do it? So I think the county website's best. I'm gonna, let me see if I can bring that up. So how you can apply to be a poll worker. Okay.
You can apply at your clerk's office, the clerk of your municipality, or you can go to the MVP site. No, MVP is most valuable something at the Michigan Secretary of State, and volunteer. Well, it's not a volunteer, it's a paid position. You become what they call an election inspector, and they pay you depending on the municipality that you're working in. I actually worked in Ypsilanti Township. That's not my municipality, but they needed people. So you can find some place that really needs workers and apply at the clerk's office to be a worker.
So Trudy, is that what you did? Did you apply through the clerk's office?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and I know there's also, I'm gonna see if I can find the county link to also to give that option. Okay. I got paid like 16 something an hour. You know, yes. Yeah, it's a long day, so you know you're a lot of money. It's a. Oh, in Ypsilanti it was $12, and in City of Ann Arbor it was 16, and it was like a 15-hour day. So you know, 16 times 15.
And SummerWorks folks will gather up this information so you can figure out how to sign up to be a poll worker too.
Oh,
So we'll
great,
gather
great.
that for you all.
Okay, and I'm going to just do a quick check on that right now too, to see if I can put something up, but then also we can, make sure you get it another way. Yeah, I would highly encourage people who are interested. And so, for example, too, when I was a poll worker, and I don't know, Trudy, if you did that too, so then I voted absentee and then worked the polls. Yep.
And you only need to be 16 to work the poll.
Oh, excellent.
So 2 years younger than you.
All right, so here are 16-year-olds, now there's something to do if you want it.
Thank you. I was going to ask that myself.
Okay, great. Any other questions or things people want to share? I am going to look up this thing about poll worker.
Is there anybody who still had a question about the absentee voting process itself?
It's on the Michigan Secretary of State's page and sign up to the election. Oh, here.
Even if we don't have a question, would you mind walking us through what that looks like?
Oh, good. Can I see that? I want to just.
So I'm Jeff, also with the League, not for women only.
Thank you. Excellent point.
For several decades now. So the absentee voting process is linked to the voting process in general, which is somehow you have to get your choices on a ballot, and that ballot has to be in the hands of some jurisdiction, some clerk's office on the day of the vote. And if you can't show up and mark that ballot in person, what you can do is ask the city of Ypsilanti for a ballot and fill it out and return it to them in time for the election, and it will count just like any other ballot that was voted that day. So in Michigan currently, if you want to vote absentee, you need to ask for an application. Either you can download it or you can go online and get it and actually fill it in online. And that application says to your clerk, send me a ballot. And in the mail will come a very official envelope with a ballot in it and another envelope inside of that you return the ballot in. And you return that ballot in time for it to be counted on election day. That means you either mail it soon enough, you take it directly to the clerk's office, or you find a drop box, which are these secure mailbox-like things that you can slip the ballot into somewhere near your clerk's office typically. So it's a process of asking for the ballot through an application, filling it out, and returning it. It's pretty straightforward.
And just something to add to that, I know we have some young adults with questions, but so for me, for example, I'm from Michigan, but I'm from the other side of the state. So when I went to U of M, I did not have the capacity to drive back every time there was an election, and I was actually able to sign up for absentee ballots to come automatically to me. And I feel like that's a fairly new functionality, but for this election, for example, I didn't have to request it. It just immediately came to my address. I have my permanent address where I'm registered to vote, and then I had my temporary address where it just sends me my ballot every time there's an election. Welcome
Did
the
you
other
want
group
to
back.
speak to that?
Yeah, one point on that as well, this ability to vote in a place where you don't live, in a jurisdiction where you don't live. In Michigan, when you fill out the application for an absentee ballot, there's a checkbox on that application that says, for every election, I want to be sent, not a ballot, but an application to get that particular election's ballot. So you can get yourself on a list that sends to some address a piece of paper which you fill out like the ones we have here and you can do online, which is the application for a ballot. And that piece of paper will show up in the mail for every election. But in the end, we are not one of those states, and there are only a few in the nation which are willing to send ballots without your specifically asking for one through an application process. There are a couple of states where if you can sign up and actually have a ballot sent to you automatically for every election, but Michigan is not one of those places.
Okay, so for people who do want to become a poll worker, I was curious, so I went on vote411.org, and at the very top it says, become a poll worker today. And you can just click the sign up button. It's really just that easy. And you give your name, email address, mobile phone, and zip code, and then sign up to get started.
Excellent. So that was vote411.org. So I'll bring that up too. And then here, this is the one that I brought up is from Washtenaw County. So if you're a Washtenaw County resident, you can go to washtenaw.org. Oh, shoot. Oh, here. And fill out this poll worker interest form. And then you can see here, it's quite interesting. So you have to declare a party. Democratic Party, Republican Party, Libertarian, U.S. Taxpayers, Green Party, Natural Law Party, Working Class Party, in order to work. And so what they're looking for is balance, so that kind of keep the parties honest. They're looking for people from different sides of the aisle, for example. So when I worked this time, I went with somebody from the other party. Like we took the ballots together down to City Hall, and we were both saying that this is all on the up and up. Everything's in zipped bags with codes and things that you cannot unseal, and so anyway, that's part of the process there. And then you can choose where you are interested in working, and then you can just so you can do all this online. So there are various places, vote411.org, here's the county one, and the Secretary of State has one too. So we'll make sure that Tabitha has resources, so if you get whatever communication from her, you can just click on something.